You ever notice how people reveal their true colors the moment you stop dancing to their tune? One day they're calling you their special one, and the next they're standing there with that calm little smile, telling their family, "I'm ending my ties with a," as if cutting you off somehow makes them noble. Funny, isn't it? How someone can drop your name like it's a burden when all they ever carried was their own fear of being exposed. But that's the thing about moments like this. They feel like the end, but they're actually the beginning. Because when a person walks away in front of an audience, it's not your weakness being shown, it's theirs. They think they're rewriting the story, clearing their hands, performing for the people watching. Meanwhile, you're the one who finally gets to stop pretending. You're the one who gets to look at the broken pieces and realize none of them belong to you in the first place. People love to announce your downfall before it even happens. They love to dramatize your exit just to feel powerful for a second. And while they're busy explaining to the world why they had to do it, you're quietly discovering something. They were never your anchor. They were the weight. They weren't your peace. They were the noise. They didn't release you. They freed you. And now you get to ask the only question that matters. What do you become once you're no longer carrying someone who was terrified of your growth? People like to think they're honest when they make announcements about you. They stand there, chest out, voice steady, acting like they're delivering some noble truth to their little audience. I'm ending my ties with them. Oh, it sounds so clean, doesn't it? So righteous. Like they just did something brave. But underneath all that composure, underneath that carefully controlled expression, there's a trembling fear they hope nobody notices. Because the truth is, when someone publicly declares your exit from their life, they aren't describing your weakness. They're broadcasting their own insecurity, wrapped in the costume of confidence. It's almost entertaining, watching how people rehearse their lines before they talk about you. They stand in front of a mirror, practicing the perfect tone, firm but wounded, decisive but thoughtful. They want to appear strong, mature, justified. They want their audience to nod along, to clap even, to say, "Oh yes, you made the right decision." Because deep down, they're terrified someone might ask the one question they can't handle. Why were you so threatened in the first place? See, people don't cut you off because you're too little. They do it because you're too much, too honest, too aware, too reflective of the things they try to hide about themselves. And it's funny, really, funny in that twisted, ironic way life works. How the louder they announce your dismissal, the more obvious it is that they were never in control. They're performing, not deciding. They're defending themselves from their own guilt, not protecting themselves from you. But you know what the real joke is? They think their announcement is a punishment for you. They think you'll hear those words, "I'm ending my ties," and crumble. They picture you devastated, confused, replaying everything in your head, trying to understand what you did wrong. That's the fantasy they cling to. It makes them feel powerful for a moment. They get to play judge, jury, executioner. They get to narrate the story in a way where they come out clean. What they don't see is the shift that happens in silence. When you're suddenly left alone, not because you were unworthy, but because they were uncomfortable, something changes. Their announcement doesn't weaken you. It exposes them. Their fear becomes visible between every word they speak, and you start to understand that the person who needed to remove you publicly wasn't strong at all. They were afraid someone might notice your strength if you stayed. The funniest part is how quickly people try to control the narrative when they lose control of themselves. They don't just walk away quietly. No, that would require inner peace. They need to talk about it, explain it, justify it, make it dramatic. Because if they don't perform for their audience, they might have to admit the truth to themselves. And the truth is ugly. They couldn't handle you. They couldn't match you. They couldn't hide from you. So they crafted a speech to soften their own shame. And while they're doing all that, talking, explaining, rehearsing. You get a front row seat to the unraveling. You don't even have to say a word. You just watch. And the more they speak, the clearer it becomes. Their announcement isn't a declaration of strength. It's a confession of fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of inadequacy. Fear of being seen next to someone who didn't flinch in reality the way they did in their imagination. That's why it's almost poetic when someone thinks cutting you off publicly is some kind of triumph. Because all they've really done is hand you proof on a silver platter they weren't ready for you. They weren't built for the truth you carry. They weren't strong enough to stay without pretending they were the hero in their own story. It's strange, isn't it, how people treat your growth like a threat. Not your mistakes, not your flaws, your growth. The moment you start standing up straighter, thinking clearer, speaking with a little more certainty, they begin to shift in their seats. They get uncomfortable, twitchy, almost allergic to the version of you that no longer bends for their convenience. And then, when they finally cut you off, they say it with this tone like they're doing you a favor. Like liberating themselves from you was some noble act of self-care. But if you listen closely, really listen, you can hear the truth trembling underneath. Losing someone who fears your growth isn't a loss at all. It's a release. People cling to the version of you that made them feel safe. Safe from being compared, safe from being exposed, safe from having to change themselves. They preferred you when you doubted yourself, questioned every move, asked for their approval like it was oxygen. They liked you better when you didn't know what you were capable of. Because as long as you stayed small, they could pretend they were big. But then something happens. You evolve. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for existing. You start using your voice in places where you used to whisper. And suddenly, the balance shifts. They look at you and see not the person they controlled, but the person they can't keep up with. That's when the fear kicks in. Fear dressed as distance. Fear disguised as, I need to take space. Fear masked as, you've changed. Oh, that's the funniest one. You've changed. As if that's a crime. As if staying stuck forever is some kind of virtue. The truth is, you didn't outgrow them. You simply grew. They were the ones standing still, hoping you'd stay right there beside them, never moving an inch. But you did move. You moved forward. You moved inward. You moved upward. And the moment your growth started to cast a shadow over their comfort zone, they panicked. They didn't know how to handle the upgraded version of you. So instead of growing with you, they let fear drive them away. And here's the real twist. When they leave, they think they're taking something from you. They imagine you sitting in the dark, devastated, replaying their absence like a tragedy. But the reality is far more amusing. Their departure creates a silence so clean, so sharp, that you start to hear your own strength without their interference. You start to recognize that the person you were becoming was someone they could never stand beside without feeling exposed. Losing someone who fears your growth is not abandonment. It's an unintentional gift, a door closing by their hand because they were afraid of what would happen if you kept walking through it. They didn't reject you. They retreated. They didn't release you. They escaped the version of you they weren't built to handle. And the moment you realize that, you finally understand the freedom they thought they were taking from you was never theirs to give in the first place. Public rejection. Now that's a fascinating little performance, isn't it? Someone stands there, clearing their throat, pretending to be so mature, so composed, telling everyone, I had to let them go. They deliver the line like they're accepting an award for bravery. The room nods, no one questions it, and they think they've successfully convinced the world, and themselves, that they made the righteous choice. But if you watch closely, if you pay attention to the tremble behind their confidence, you can see what's really happening. That moment doesn't reveal your worth. It exposes theirs. People love to weaponize the spotlight. They step into it not because they're strong, but because they're desperate for validation. The more insecure they are, The bigger the audience, they need to mask it. So when they publicly reject you, they're not demonstrating power. They're begging for reassurance. They want witnesses. They need applause. They're terrified someone might see the truth if they walk away quietly. Quiet exits require integrity. Loud ones hide fear. Isn't it fascinating how someone can turn their discomfort into your defect? They feel threatened, overwhelmed, intimidated, so they paint you as the problem. It's easier that way. They get to rewrite reality in front of others, create a version where they're the hero and you're the villain. But villains don't stay silent. Heroes don't crumble. And the person who's truly secure doesn't need an audience to justify their choices. Only the fragile need witnesses to their decisions. And oh, the theatrics. The sighs, the rehearsed sadness, the carefully timed pauses. They speak as if they're carrying some great burden, as if letting you go is an act of noble sacrifice. But in truth, they're just protecting their image. They're terrified of being judged, terrified that people might wonder why someone like you would ever leave them first. So they rush to the stage, announce your dismissal, and hope that by controlling the narrative, they can control the way people see them. But the joke is in the silence that follows. The moment the lights dim and people go back to their lives, the reality sets in. Their public declaration didn't change who you are. It didn't decrease your value. It didn't erase your strength. It only highlighted their fear. When someone has to talk about you loudly, it's because they're afraid of what your quiet presence reveals about them. When someone publicly rejects you, they think they're showing the world your flaws. But what they're really showing is their inability to handle authenticity, depth, or truth. Public rejection is never about you. It's a mirror they're trying to shatter because they don't like the reflection. It's a confession disguised as confidence. It's fear dressed in bravado. They aren't demonstrating your weakness. They're advertising their own. And the most amusing part is, they can't even see it. They think the spotlight protects them, not realizing it's the same light that exposes every crack they tried so desperately to hide. Silenced people underestimate it. They think power lives in shouting, in speeches, in long explanations. But the real power, the dangerous kind, sits inside silence, especially after betrayal. See, the one who betrayed you expects noise. They expect chaos, confrontation, tears, maybe even a desperate plea. They prepare for all that. They rehearse their defenses, polish their excuses, sharpen their guilt-ridden justifications. They're ready for a fight. What they're not ready for, what terrifies them, is your quiet. Your silence after betrayal does something their words never could. It forces them to hear their own actions echo back at them. No shouting, no arguing, no demands for closure. Just that stillness that makes them look inward, at the truth they tried so hard to avoid. The silence becomes a mirror they didn't ask for. And trust me, people hate mirrors when they're not wearing their masks. You know what silence really does? It denies them control. They wanted to direct the scene, play the victim, narrate the story. They expected to manipulate your emotions, twist the narrative, make themselves look like the wounded one. But when you don't react, when you don't give them the performance they were counting on, their script falls apart. Suddenly, they're standing on stage with no lines, no applause, no audience willing to validate their role. And that's when the panic sets in. Because your silence doesn't say, "I don't care." It says something far colder, far stronger. "I see everything." And people fear being seen more than anything. They fear someone who refuses to crumble. They fear someone they can't provoke. They fear someone who leaves them alone with their own guilt, their own pettiness, their own insecurity. Betrayal exposes the betrayer, not the betrayed. But silence makes that exposure unavoidable. And isn't it interesting how your quiet presence haunts them more than your anger ever could? Anger they can dismiss. Tears they can pity. Arguments they can twist. But silence keeps replaying in their head long after you've walked away. It becomes the question they can't answer, the consequence they can't escape, The reminder that their actions spoke louder than anything you could have said. The real beauty of silence is its unpredictability. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you've realized. That uncertainty eats at them. It crawls under their skin, whispering possibilities they can't control. They start to wonder if you've outgrown them, if you've seen through them, if you've recognized your own worth in a way they hoped you never would. Silence becomes your armor, your weapon, your statement. And the irony is delicious. The person who betrayed you thought they were ending your power by walking away, by cutting you off, by choosing someone else over you. But your silence after their betrayal shows them the truth. They never had power over you at all. You were carrying them. You were elevating them. You were the one who kept the connection alive. And once you stopped speaking, everything they built on lies and performance started to crumble without you lifting a single finger. There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when being cut off by someone stops feeling like abandonment and starts feeling like revelation. At first, it stings. That sudden distance, that cold declaration, that final little, "I'm done." They think it breaks you. They think it knocks the breath out of your lungs. But slowly, almost like a dark little joke unfolding in slow motion, you start realizing something they never wanted you to see. That moment, the one where they choose to walk away, isn't the collapse of your identity. It's the birth of it. People don't realize how much of yourself you mute when you're trying to maintain a connection that's already dying on their side. You shrink a little here, soften a little there, bite your tongue, dim your glow. You bend your nature just to keep the peace, and they get used to that version of you, the quieter, smaller, more convenient version, the one that doesn't threaten their ego or expose their insecurities. They call it love or respect or loyalty, but really, it's just dependence on a version of you that isn't even real. And then, suddenly, they cut the string. They think they're freeing themselves from something heavy, something complicated, something too much. They walk away believing they've made some bold decision. But look closer. Who were they really freeing themselves from? The muted version of you, the one you created for them, the real you, the one you kept tucked away so they wouldn't feel overshadowed, finally gets to breathe. The funny thing is, they think they escaped you, when all they did was release the part of you they weren't capable of handling. When someone cuts you off, it forces you into a new kind of clarity. Not the gentle, poetic kind. No, the sharp kind. The kind that slices through illusions' roles, and the stories you told yourself to keep a weak connection alive. You start seeing the truth of who you are without their expectations whispering in your ear. You start recognizing the strength in your own voice, the depth in your own mind. And the identity you discover isn't broken, isn't begging, isn't incomplete. It's untouched, untamed, unmasked. And isn't it ironic? They thought leaving would make you question your worth. Instead, it stripped away everything that was holding you back from seeing it. Their absence becomes the silence where your real identity steps forward. Not the identity built around pleasing them, accommodating them, making room for their fragility. No, the identity you forged in the fires of everything you survived before them. The identity that doesn't need their approval to exist. Being cut off doesn't erase you. It reveals you. It shows you the edges of your potential, the places you abandoned, the confidence you buried under their comfort. And once you see that version of yourself, once you meet the person you were always supposed to be, you realize something beautifully twisted. Losing them didn't cost you anything. It simply removed the last obstacle between you and the truth of who you are. The ties they ended. Oh, they weren't yours to begin with. People love to dramatize separation like it's a verdict passed down from some invisible court. "I'm cutting them off," they say with all the gravity of someone signing their own manifesto. They make it sound decisive, monumental, as if the words themselves carry the weight of truth. But here's the punchline. They were never holding anything of yours. You were carrying the connection. You were the glue, the bridge, the fire keeping everything alive. And the moment they announce their departure, all they're really showing is how little they ever invested in what they claim to have valued. It's hilarious if you think about it. They assume that by dropping the word ending in front of a tie, they're erasing history, erasing emotion, erasing significance. They imagine you collapsing, counting losses, questioning yourself. They picture drama. They dream of tears. But what they don't understand is that the ties they pretend to sever were already fraying long before their lips formed the sentence. You've been walking on the cracks they built, holding the pieces together while they rehearsed the exit speech. They never left you anything to sever. All they left was the empty act of pretending it mattered. The bitter truth is, they were never ready for consistency, for honesty, for depth. They wanted a version of connection they could control, manipulate, and narrate to their audience. But reality has a nasty habit of defying scripts. And the moment they announce the end, reality flips the mirror. Their insecurity, their fragility, their fear of being outshined, all of it reflects back in the public act of severing ties. They think they are delivering a verdict on you, but in truth, they're exposing themselves. And you, the one left standing, are free to see it. You see the performance, the careful cadence, the false composure. You see the hesitation they tried to hide, the tremor in their pride. You understand that the ties were never a gift, they were a burden. And their departure doesn't diminish you, it clarifies you. It illuminates what was real, what was borrowed, and what was always yours to reclaim. You begin to understand that the connections you carry forward, the ones that survive, are not measured by proclamations or announcements. They are measured by commitment, presence, and resilience. What's truly fascinating is how people love to dramatize what they never fully respected. They want a scene, a reaction, a witness. They think that ending ties loudly proves strength, when in reality it proves weakness. The inability to stay, the inability to face reality without scripting it, the inability to confront their own fear of inadequacy. And as they walk away, pretending that cutting off is courage, you can't help but notice how empty it looks, how hollow it sounds, how little it touches your essence. It's ironic, isn't it? The moment they cut you off, they think they've won. But victory is an illusion reserved for the desperate. True power lies in what remains unbroken within you, the identity they underestimated, the resilience they feared, the strength that grows quietly, patiently, without anyone needing to witness it. You realize that what they abandoned wasn't you. They abandoned a chance to meet themselves, and in doing so, they revealed more about who they are than any words ever could.